Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our Kabbalah and Coffee series. I got my coffee, I have my Kabbalah, good to go. And we're going to start today in honor of Gimel Tammuz. We'll start a Maimer, Veata Tetzaveh. As I mentioned, this is a Maimer that one should learn every few years, in which the Rebbe discusses some very, very fundamental Jewish ideas and Torah ideas, the relationship between the Jewish people and Moshe Rabbeinu with the Jewish people, and Golus. So we'll do that today. It's actually the last Maimer that the Rebbe distributed before he fell ill. So there's a special chavivus, it's a preciousness to this Maimer. So let's begin. And you, Moshe, shall command the children of Israel, and they shall bring to you, this is a verse in Parshas Tetzaveh. The portion begins, it was said during that time, so it's based on that verse. It begins with the words, and you, Moshe, shall command the children of Israel, and they shall bring to you pure olive oil, crushed for the luminary, to raise up a constant flame. He's saying over here like this, Moshe should command the Jewish people that they should bring to him pure olive oil that was crushed from the olive. What is the purpose of it? For the luminary, to light up the menorah. So that they should use the olive oil for the menorah to raise up a constant flame. The anomalies of this verse are well known. In all the commandments of the Torah, God says to Moshe, command the children of Israel. Or some similar phrase. In this verse, the Torah says, and you shall command the children of Israel. So that's an interesting question. Number one, everywhere else in the Torah it says, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe leimer, God said to Moshe, Tetzaveh b'nei Yisroel, command the children of Israel. Over here it doesn't have that preface. It's just straight. Veata Tetzaveh, you shall command. Who is commanding over here, Moshe or God? Question number one. Now, furthermore, this anomaly concerns not only the linguistic style of the verse, but its meaning as well. The expression, and you shall command, implies that Moshe is the commander. This needs to be understood, for Moshe is only the messenger to relay God's command to Israel. Why then does the verse say, and you shall command? So it's a double question. It's one question that has 2 points to it. Why the difference? And the content is most importantly, the content is the problem here. Also requiring explanation are the words, and they shall bring to you. That the children of Israel should bring the oil to Moshe, to you. Since it was Aaron who lit the lamps, as we know, the Kohen Gadol lit the menorah in the temple, why was it necessary to bring the oil to Moshe? Question number 3. The words oil crushed for the luminary also require explanation. Since oil to illuminate seems the more appropriate expression. What is the luminary? Just to illuminate. That's what you really want the oil for. It should be to illuminate the temple. The luminary sound is a very different connotation. Look at note number 9. Luminary and illumination are very different things. The luminary is the source of light, while the illumination is the light that shines forth from the luminary. Now, the utilization of pure crushed olive oil would seem to benefit the illumination, for the light produced by the highest quality oil is likewise of the highest quality, brighter, clearer. Why then does the verse attribute the benefit of the oil to the luminary? He's going to have copies in a minute. In what way does this pure crushed oil and its requirement to be brought to Moshe assist the luminary? You follow? Understand? Good. And one last question, we must also understand why in the next verse the lights are spoken of as being arranged by Aaron from evening to morning, whereas here the expression is to raise up a constant lamp. Is it from evening to morning, or is it a constant lamp? Look at 11. This is interesting. Biblical commentators have reconciled this discrepancy in different ways. Rashi states that the menorah remained lit only from evening till morning, but was constant in the sense that it was kindled every single day. That's what constant means, every single day in the evening. Ramban, citing Sifri and Teres Kehanim, maintains that the western lamp of the menorah did indeed burn constantly, while the other lamps burned only at night. As to which lamp is considered a western lamp, okay, that's a whole discussion. Points notwithstanding, this discourse will probe the deeper significance of the verse's nuances, for as Rabbi Yisroel of Lubavitch writes in his discourse of 5687, all these things have their parallel in the spiritual service of man's soul. So we'll discuss it on a different level. Why is he taking so long? Make the copies from. I hope he knows what he's doing there. It's a new machine, so it's Chapter 2. My father-in-law, the Rebbe, referring to the Friedrich Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yisroel, in his famous discourse entitled V'kibul HaYehudim, which was said on Purim Kotten in 1927, explains, just as a to give you a little background of that discourse that the previous Rebbe said on Purim Kotten 1927. This was at the worst time of his life. In the room he was in, the Farbrengen that he held that night was in his apartment in Leningrad. And in this apartment were Hasidim, a good group, and amongst them were Hasidim dressed up as people dressed up as Hasidim, but they were the furthest thing from Hasidim. They were actually spies from the KGB. They were in his apartment. They came dressed up as Hasidim to hear what the Rebbe was saying, because the Rebbe was the arch enemy of the communist regime. And a few months later, he was actually put in prison, and he had his famous imprisonment in June that year. And he was sentenced to death, and then it was changed, and he was sent to exile, and that was also, he was released after 27 days, at that point he had to leave. They made him leave Russia.
The spies were all Yids, right?
The spies were all Yid. They were the Bolsheviks, the Jewish section of the communist Bolsheviks, yeah. And they were the worst enemies of the Jews. And at that Farbrengen, the Friedrich Rebbe said, I know they're here. He said it out loud to the Chassidim. I know that they're here, and I don't care. I'm not going to change one bit of who I am and what I'm going to say. And he started speaking at that Farbrengen to the Chassidim. It was a time of great self-sacrifice. I mean, to be Jewish in Russia. And he turned to one of the Chassidim and said, if they burn you, and if they ask you to send your kid to the shkola, to the communist educational system, and if not, they burn you in a fire, what would you do? And he was fire and brimstone at that Farbrengen. And, so he uplifted the Chassidim, obviously. He gave them the strength to stick it out. And they did, for many, many years to follow. But he paid the ultimate price. And they physically destroyed him. I mean, I never recovered from that imprisonment. They threw him up and down steps and ladders and floor donuts. It was torture. And he never recovered. He came to the United States. He came in a wheelchair. He was already a broken man. But he kept the flame of Yiddishkeit alive in Russia for decades following that. Anyway, so that's at this Farbrengen he delivered the famous discourse V'kibul HaYehudim. So in his discourse he explains that the Hebrew word for command, Tetzaveh, mitzvah, which is the opening words of this verse, Veata Tetzaveh, you should command. So the Hebrew word for command, the Tetzaveh, connotes also binding and uniting. That's what the word mitzvah means. Mitzvah means not only a good deed or a commandment, it means a connection, binding. When you do a mitzvah, you bind yourself to Hashem, you become connected to Hashem. So therefore, you shall command the children of Israel, means therefore that Moshe binds and unites the children of Israel with the infinite light of Hashem. That's the meaning over here, Veata Tetzaveh. You not only should command, but you should bind. Moshe's job is to bind and connect the Jewish people with the infinite light of Hashem, with Hashem himself. So we have already an answer to question number one. Why does it say, Veata Tetzaveh, you shall command? Is Moshe the commander? Right? That was the question. The answer over here he's giving over here is that Tetzaveh doesn't only mean command, it means to connect. And that indeed is Moshe's job. Moshe's job is to connect the Jewish people with God, to bind them together. As Moshe himself says in the Torah, I stand between you and God as a middle, as the intermediary. What's the job of this intermediary? To connect them. So, and you shall command the children of Israel means that Moshe binds and unites the children of Israel with the infinite light. And take a look at 16. The infinite light, the Ein Sof in Hebrew. Kabbalah uses the term Ein Sof to refer to the most absolute infinite force of God, totally beyond description, knowledge, and comprehension, completely beyond any boundaries. The essence of God himself. God's infinite expression and revelation, the infinite light, is termed in Hebrew Ein Sof. Okay. Is it go or not?
It's not printing, right?
Took you 15 minutes to tell me it's not working.
Well, I had an assistant that didn't help.
Who was the assistant? Who was there?
Rachel.
Oh, Rachel's there. Right. Why didn't it go?
It's not, never mind. You need Barry.
Didn't work, huh? Oh, you did get something.
Get some.
What is the second?
Forget about this. Just give it out there.
We spend the whole day in there.
So these new machines, it's something.
Yes.
So first of all, you have a third, so you look together, and the copies, it's good. And through Moshe's influencing Israel, binding them with the infinite light, Moshe is enhanced as well. Moshe is enhanced through this, connecting the Jewish people with God. Moshe himself is enhanced. For Moshe and Israel can be compared to head and foot, as in the verse in Numbers, 600,000 feet is the nation I am within. Moshe says this. Look at 19. It gives you some background. Following God's declaration that he will provide the children of Israel with meat, as they requested, and punish those who had challenged him, Moshe replies, 600,000 feet is the nation I am within. Yet you say that I shall give them meat, and they shall eat for a month of days. The meaning of Moshe's reply aside, biblical commentators have offered various interpretations of for what seems to be skepticism on Moshe's part. Okay, we'll leave that for a different time. They're not going to answer that question over here. Well, they explain that Moshe refers to the children of Israel numbering roughly 600,000. And he says 600,000 feet that I'm within. What does he mean by this? The mystical significance of this term, explain Hasidic teachings, is that the souls of the Jewish people to their leader are like feet to the head. Just as the head contains the power of vision and perception and provides direction to the body, Moshe, the leader of Israel, perceives godliness and provides spiritual direction to his people. But like the feet, they carry the head to where it wishes to go, and where it wishes to go and cannot on its own. The head can't go anywhere on its own. So the feet have to carry the head to where it wants to go. The children of Israel performed the vital task of actually fulfilling the mission set forth by their leader, something he cannot do without them. In this sense, they enhance Moshe. They accomplish what he cannot, and thereby lift him to a spiritual standing loftier than that which he cannot realize on his own. So that's the metaphor over here. Let's go back a second. We're on page 30, on the bottom. You with me or not?
Page 30.
What?
We jumped from 27 to 31, so.
Oh, what a shame.
And you can't send don't send the kid to do a man's job.
I want to get 40,000, page 27.
But we have 4 of these.
Don't worry.
Where's the 4th? Oh, you have it. Right, Bob.
These are on page 27.
All right. So he says like this. Let's read that again. For Moshe and Israel can be compared to head and foot. As in the verse, 600,000 feet is the nation I am within. So he compares the Jewish people to feet because he's the head to the feet, to the Jewish people, and they, on the other hand, are the feet that carry to him, enhance him to carry him to where he needs to go. All Israel are the feet of Moshe. Moshe is their head. And just as a person's feet bring his head to a place that the head on its own could not reach, so it is with Moshe and Israel. Through Israel, Moshe's feet, Moshe is enhanced. This idea is expressed in the word 600,000 feet in the nation that I am within. This can be interpreted homiletically to mean that through the feet of the nation, the revelation of I is drawn within Moshe. If you look in the Hebrew words, Sheish meis elef ragli ha'om asher anoichi bekirbei. 600,000 feet, asher anoichi bekirbei. What does asher anoichi bekirbei mean? That I am within. Could have said asher ani bekirbei, a more common term for I. But it says anoichi. So the Rebbe says in the brackets, this can be interpreted homiletically to mean that through the feet of the nation, the revelation of I, Hashem's I, Anoichi, is drawn within Moshe. So Moshe is also enhanced. He gets an additional revelation of godliness within his own soul via the feet, via the Jewish children. So what do we have from here? That Moshe is the one that connects Tetzaveh B'nai Yisroel with Hashem. He connects the Jewish people with the infinite light of Hashem. That's Moshe's job. And when that happens, the Jewish people enhance Moshe also. He also gets a benefit from this. Not that he's doing it for the benefit, but there's an additional spiritual benefit to Moshe as well. Let's continue. This then is the meaning of, and you shall command the children of Israel, and they shall bring to you olive oil. Through Moshe's binding and connecting the children of Israel with the infinite light, the children of Israel bring olive oil to Moshe. Those are the words, that they shall bring to you, meaning that they cause an increase in light within Moshe.
Ah.
That's why they bring it to Moshe, not to Aaron. Because they add to Moshe's an additional light as well. We're on page 34 now. If you look at 22, he sums it up. He says that this chapter, on page 33, this chapter answers 2 of the 4 original questions. You have it? I'll buy you another couple in I'm going to go through this. I'll buy a bunch of another 4 or 5 copies. So we'll have.
I'll bring mine from home.
This chapter answers 2 of the 4 original questions. Question 1, why does it say, and you shall command instead of the usual term command? Answer. The phrase is rendered, and you shall unite. Command. Command means also unite and bind the children of Israel with the infinite light. Therefore, Moshe is not just relaying the command of God, but is in fact the Tetzaveh uniter in this case, since he is uniting the children of Israel with the infinite light. And question 2 was, why was the oil brought to Moshe and not to Aaron? The answer is, in the spiritual sense of the verse, the bringing of oil refers to the bringing of additional light to Moshe, which is caused by Moshe uniting the Jewish people with the infinite light. In this sense, the Jewish people who are the feet of Moshe enhance Moshe just as the feet of the body enhance the head. The 3rd question will be answered in the next chapter. The 4th question will be answered in chapter 11. Okay. Let's move on to chapter 3. Page 34. To explain the above, the Rebbe first explains, when he says the Rebbe, he means the previous Rebbe. He's referring to his father-in-law in that Maimer. To explain the above, the Rebbe first explains in the discourse that Moshe is called faithful shepherd. The faithful shepherd. Now this term, by the way, in Zohar, Moshe is called the Rai Mehemne everywhere. That's what he's referred to as the faithful shepherd. This term means two things. A, Moshe is the faithful shepherd of Israel. It means he's dedicated, he's completely given over to us and so on. And B, that Rai Mehemne, the faithful shepherd, means something else. Moshe feeds and sustains Israel in the matter of faith. In other words, he's a shepherd of faith. Not he's the faithful shepherd, but he's the shepherd of faith. What's a shepherd? Of sheep. He leads the flock and he brings them to pasture, and he feeds them grass, he feeds them whatever they need to eat. Moshe is the shepherd of Israel. What does he feed us with? With faith. He makes our faith on a whole, he makes that our faith should be on a whole different level. In that sense, he's the shepherd of faith. Not he's a faithful shepherd, they're both true. He's a faithful shepherd, but he's also a shepherd of faith. A Yid without Moshe believes in God, but it's a different when you have it. When Moshe gets a hold of you, your faith is on a whole different world, on a whole different level. He shepherds you with faith. He feeds you with a deeper level of faith. The faith possessed by Israel on their own, by their own nature, that the Jewish people are believers, the sons of believers, the fact that they have a neshama, can remain detached from their conscious beings. It can be detached. The Gemara gives an example of a stealer, a robber. Right? You have a guy that burglarizes a home. And while he's crawling through the window, he asks Hashem, he turns his head up to heaven and asks Hashem, please make sure no one catches me.
And he kisses the mezuzah on his way out.
Or whatever. So the question is, that's a different thing, but that can be reflex. But here he's turning to God, asking for his protection, and no one should catch him. That means he believes in God. Not only believes in God, but he believes that God he believes in divine providence. He really believes in God. But he's doing something that is so antithetical to what God wants. How could this contradiction how does this make any sense? The answer is that his faith is abstract. It hovers above him. It doesn't really enter into him in a personal way. So he says like this, the faith possessed, again the second paragraph, the faith possessed by Israel by their own nature, the fact that the Jewish people are believers, the sons of believers, can remain detached from their conscious beings. Like that stealer is detached, doesn't penetrate it. That Moshe feeds and sustains them in the matter of faith means that he causes them to feel their faith consciously. Like physical food, look at 29. Like physical food that is eaten and digested, the faith shepherded by Moshe is likewise internal. It goes inside like food. A faith that enters into and affects one's very consciousness. This is what is meant by the Zohar statement: the supernal faith will be fed and sustained by you, Moshe. That Moshe feeds and sustains the faith means that he causes the people to experience it consciously. That means the faith is there. A Jew has faith. That Jew believers, the sons of believers, but the definition they're believers. But that belief needs to now go inside their digestive system, their spiritual digestive system. That is accomplished through Moshe. He shepherds them in the matter of faith itself. He feeds them the faith. The Rebbe goes on in the discourse to say that Moshe's capacity as shepherd of faith is true also of the offshoots of Moses in every generation. This is not true only about the original Moshe in the desert, but this is true about every subsequent Moshe. And the Zohar says that in every generation there's a soul, a Yid that is bestowed with this soul of Moshe, and he becomes the extension of Moshe in every generation. Because Yiddishkeit can't be without Moshe. That's how it was set up from Sinai. So this is true also with every Moshe of every generation. The Jewish leaders in every generation strengthen the faith of the Jewish people of their generation so that they experience their faith consciously. That's the job of Moshe Rabbeinu. To shepherd the people with faith. An example of such a leader was Mordechai. In the story of Purim, don't forget this Maimah was said on Purim Cotton. An example of such a leader was Mordechai. The offshoot of Moshe and his generation. As in the Midrash's statement, Mordechai in his generation was like Moshe in his generation. So even during the period of Haman's persecution, when study of Torah and observance of mitzvahs required self-sacrifice, right? Mordechai held public gatherings to strengthen the Jewish people's faith in God and to fortify them in the study of Torah and observance of mitzvahs. Take a look at 36. Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, whose discourse of this year, 1927, focuses on the importance of giving children a Torah true education, emphasizes that the primary to Mordechai's efforts to rouse his fellow Jews was his defiantly teaching Torah publicly to the young children. Indeed, the Midrash says, what? The Midrash says that Mordechai had 22,000 students, all of whom pledged their dedication to God and His Torah, even to the point of self-sacrifice. It says that in the Medrash Rabbah, on Megillah Esther, that's what it says, that he had, you imagine this, 22,000 young children? Yeah. And the Medrash continues to say that the mothers came begging Mordechai to let the kids go home, and he said, go, sure, I'm not holding any. They wanted to take, the kids didn't want to go. And they stayed with Mordechai through thick and thin. Little kids, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 22,000 children. And he changed the whole generation. After expanding upon the idea that Moshe and his offshoots in every generation strengthened Israel's faith, the Rebbe goes on to explain in that discourse the precise wording of the phrase, oil crushed for the luminary. For the luminary instead of to illuminate. You remember the question in the early beginning of the Maimah. Why does it say for the luminary, not to illuminate? You crush the olives to provide good oil, the best oil, to illuminate even better. What's the luminary? He explains this point of the crushed for the luminary is probably one of the focal points of this Maimon, because we're talking about a time in 1927 when the Rebbe and his Chassidim and the Jewish people in general were crushed by the opposing forces, by Stalin and the communists and so on and so forth. He explains that during exile everyone is broken and crushed. Katit lamaor. They're broken and crushed. And we therefore, because we're crushed, we reach the luminary, the essence from which the light is derived. When you're not crushed, so you're functioning based, you're utilizing, in other words, what makes you function today as a Yid? Your neshama. But what part of your neshama are you accessing when you're not crushed? The illuminating part of the neshama, the part of the neshama that is shining in your body. The love of your neshama, the intellect of your neshama. You think about Hashem, you love Hashem, you do mitzvahs, the deeds of the neshama. But when you're crushed, what happens? You reach not only the light of the neshama, but you reach the essence of the neshama, which is the luminary. The source of the light, which is the very essence of the neshama. When a Yid is put to the wall like that, crushed and put to the corner, and he has to decide between God and between God and not God, the luminary starts shining. That's why it says over here the luminary. Crushed for the luminary. When you crush a Yid, the essence of his neshama starts shining. Not only the light of the neshama. The light of the neshama is not going to get you too far. It'll get you far in normal times you can function as a Yid. But in difficult times you need the luminary. And that's the job of Moshe Rabbeinu. To reveal the luminary of the neshama. Follow? We need to understand the connection between this interpretation of crushed for the luminary, and the discourse's prior comments that Moshe and his offshoots in every generation feed us and sustain the faith, causing it to be felt consciously. Let's take a look at 40. What's the question over here? This question is one of juxtaposition. There seem to be two distinct points made in the discourse of 1927. 5687 corresponds to 1927. Firstly, that Moshe and the subsequent Jewish leaders are shepherds of faith. And secondly, that the hardships of exile elicit the soul's essence. From the juxtaposition of these ideas in Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak's discourse, however, it would appear that they are connected somehow. What then is their connection? So let's read this paragraph again. We need to understand the connection between this interpretation of crushed for the luminary, which the Rebbe just explained. The previous Rebbe explained means that through being crushed in exile, you reach the essence of the neshama, and the discourse's prior comments that Moshe and his offshoots in every generation feed and sustain the faith itself. They're the shepherds of faith, causing it to be felt consciously. So what's the juxtaposition? You understand what's happening there? The flow? Good. Let's move on to chapter 4. The interpretation of the verse, and you shall command, which is the beginning of this discourse, opened up with that pasuk, Veata Tetzaveh, you should command, right? And we explained that it means you should connect, appears in the discourse. Oh, he says like this, the interpretation, the previous Rebbe's explanation of the verse Veata Tetzaveh, and you shall command, appears in the discourse following the concept discussed at the start of the discourse, namely that the meaning of the verse and the Jews accepted. Let me give you a little bit of an outside explanation of it. I said to you that this discourse was said in 1927 on Purim Cotton, right? What was the opening verse of that discourse? Not Veata Tetzaveh. It was V'kibel HaYehudim, a verse in the Megillah. What does the verse mean over there? That the Jewish people accepted during the time of Purim the Torah anew. Right? So the Rebbe, in the previous Rebbe, in that discourse, first in the beginning explains that verse. That the Jew, what does it mean they accepted anew? On Purim time they accepted the Torah for real, whereas by Matan Torah at Sinai it wasn't for real. What is the meaning of that? So first he explains that. And then he gets into Veata Tetzaveh. Because it happened to be that Purim Cotton that year was in the portion of Veata Tetzaveh. As it always is usually. So let's read now again. 4. The interpretation of the verse, and you shall command, appears in the discourse that the previous Rebbe's explanation of the words Ve'ata Tetzaveh, and you shall command, which he interpreted as meaning you shall connect, and that what the job of Moshe is and that whole thing, it appears in his discourse following the concept discussed at the start of the discourse. What's the start of the discourse? Namely, that the meaning of the verse and the Jews accepted what they had begun to observe at Matan Torah during Purim. They accepted what they had begun to observe at Sinai is that they accepted in the days of Achashverosh what they had begun at the time of Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. In other words, at Matan Torah there was only a beginning. They began to observe. And in the days of Achashverosh of Purim, during the period of Haman's persecution, there was an acceptance, and the Jews accepted, a full acceptance. This interpretation is similar to that Talmudic interpretation. The Frierdiker Rebbe explains it based on what the Talmud says. On the verse. Of the verse, then the Jews established and accepted also a verse in the Megillah. They established what they had already accepted. When that Matan Torah, they said, we will do. Before saying, we will listen, Nasa v'nishma, there was only an acceptance. In the days of Achashverosh, however, they established what they had accepted, became real. So it's a similar idea. The Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, in his discourse is explaining that over here they accepted what they began to do in Sinai. Similar to what the Gemara says, that at Purim they established what they accepted at Sinai. The same idea. Now the Rebbe points out in the discourse that this seems to be wondrous. What is the meaning of this? For at the time of Matan Torah, the Jewish people were at the highest possible level that they experienced divine revelation of the loftiest sort. Right? The greatest level at Matan Torah. In addition to the fact that even before Matan Torah, there were extremely lofty revelations. The revelation during the Exodus from Egypt, and especially during the splitting of the sea. The revelation during Matan Torah was even greater. So here they are at the highest level of godly revelation. By contrast, during the days of Achashverosh, it was the lowest. The Jewish people were at the lowest level of levels. In addition to the usual divine concealment that prevails during the period of exile, by every exile there's divine concealment. For every, it says in the bracket, for every exile is similar to the Egyptian exile. And just as it is written of the Egyptian exile. It says over there, and they did not hear Moses because of shortness of breath and harsh labor. What is shortness of breath and harsh labor? They were exhausted. God was not revealed then. So the neshamas were exhausted. It also means that. So it is similarly in every exile, there are many challenges to the observance of Torah mitzvahs. There's general concealment in every exile. But at the time of Achashverosh, it was even worse. At that time, during Haman's persecution, the concealment was even greater. Why was the concealment even greater during the Haman's exile? So he says of it in 58, look at 58. Indeed, our sages state that the biblical allusion to the story of Esther is in the verse that speaks of divine concealment. Where the Gemara asks, where is Esther found in the Torah? Where is there a hint for Esther in the Torah? And he answers the verse, but I will surely have concealed Haster Astir, Esther. Those are the words in Deuteronomy. I will surely have concealed my face on that day. Physically, too, the Jewish people were then at the lowest of levels, as they faced a decree that sought to destroy, God forbid, the entire Jewish nation, man, woman, and child, on one day. So Purim was not only an exile, within exile it was the worst. So the Friedrich Rebbe asks this unbelievable question. Let's read top of 42. Yet, at the time of Matan Torah, when the Jewish people were at the highest possible level, there was only a beginning. They began to observe. While during Haman's persecution, when they were at the lowest of levels, precisely then did they accept what they had begun at Matan Torah. Then it was a full acceptance. How does that make any sense? You would think the other way around. And at the time of Mordechai, Haman, it was all down. So they gave up what they accepted. It's the opposite. At Matan Torah was a little acceptance by Haman, and by the time of Achashverosh, the Kibbutz was an established acceptance. Why? And the Rebbe explains this. Let's go to the end of chapter 4. The Rebbe explains in that discourse this wonder by saying that during the time of persecution, their observance of Torah mitzvahs entailed self-sacrifice. You couldn't just be an autopilot Jew during the time of Haman. You couldn't be on autopilot. Over there you needed self-sacrifice. In addition to the fact that they exhibited self-sacrifice in not denying their religion, God forbid, as explained in Torah 8 of the Alter Rebbe, had they chosen to change their religion, Haman would have accepted them and not killed them. They would not have been harmed, since the decree pertained only to Jews. So, but if you gave up your Judaism, you were safe. Yet, an extraneous, heretical thought never crossed their minds, God forbid. That's what it says. It didn't even occur to them, maybe not. It didn't even enter their mind. So besides that, they exhibited self-sacrifice for the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs. They were ready to give up their life.
So why would they have to
even to the extent of holding public gatherings to study Torah with self-sacrifice. What?
So why would they have at such a low level? It seems to be they were at a very high level.
Oh, in other words, it's the crushing, because they were crushed. That's what brought out the highest level of their neshama. That's exactly the point here. They were on the lowest level in terms of concealment of God.
Oh.
God was completely concealed. In that sense, they were spiritually on the lowest level, whereas Matan Torah, they were on the highest level. But that's what happens when when God is revealed. You're on autopilot.
Right.
The lower parts of your neshama are enough to keep you going. But when you're in a situation like that, in Russia in 1927, or in Haman and whenever those years, 320 before the CE.
Morning.
It's there.
Morning.
So then you need something more than your regular resources of the neshama. Then you need lamoir. You got to get to the luminary. Not the illumination is not enough. When you crush someone, it brings out the luminary. Let's just finish this up. And the awakening of their self-sacrifice was caused by Mordechai the Jew. Who woke up that essence of the neshama? Mordechai, the Moses of his generation. This then is the understanding of the verse, and the Jews accepted what they had begun to observe. That Matan Torah was only a beginning. And at the time of Haman's decree, there was the acceptance. As a result of their actual self-sacrifice for Torah mitzvahs, they ascended in regard to this matter, to the loftier level than the level they were at during Matan Torah. This is incredible. It was therefore precisely then that the acceptance occurred and the Jews accepted. And we'll finish up with this paragraph, this page. It can apparently be said that the interpretation of crushed for the luminary, that through causes, through being broken and crushed, we reach the luminary. The essence of the neshama is the next. That alone, that explanation is an explanation of the fact that precisely during the time of persecution, they reached an extremely lofty level of self-sacrifice. For self-sacrifice stems from the soul's essence, which transcends revelation. Transcends revelation. The essence transcends revelation. The luminary. The luminary is the essence from which the light is derived. And because they were then in a state of causes broken and crushed, the soul's essence, the luminary, was revealed. However, from the sequence of ideas in the discourse, with the interpretation of crushed for the luminary, that through causes, through being crushed, you reach the luminary, follows the idea of shepherd of faith. With the previous Rebbe explains the idea of Moshe Rabbeinu as the shepherd of faith. It seems that juxtapose these two concepts. It seems, therefore, that the concept of crushed to the luminary pertains also to the fact that Moshe feeds and sustains the faith, causing it to be felt consciously. There's a relationship over there. That Moshe feeds the faith of the Jewish people is one idea, and that through being crushed you reach the luminary is another idea, but the fact that they're juxtaposed, the Rebbe is going to suggest and explain now, in the continuation of this discourse, that they're related, one concept to the other. That the very revelation of the luminary during times of being crushed comes from Moshe Rabbeinu. He's the one that reveals it. But we'll go over this chapter a little bit next week again, because we did it quick, and we'll move on. And I'll get you another few.